And as an American, I see it as a story of freedom against an oppressor. The reason my country exists is because we believed that we didn't have to accept the rule of an unjust ruler. So we got rid of King George. And when I saw that story of Hussein, it resonated with me as an American. And I saw the concept of freedom in Islam. I saw the concept of justice. I saw the concept of rights. And it really empowered me as a Muslim, subhanAllah. I'd love to go to Kerbala. I'd love to do ziyarah of all the imma. I'd actually really love to do the ziyarah of Musa al-Kazim. Of all the ma'asumin, as I was learning about the 12 imams, his story really was very interesting to me. And what I loved about him so much is that even though he was tortured and kept in prison and just Muslim his whole life, the akhlaq that he conducted himself with and his habit of always speaking to people highly is what made me respect him. And it's been a reminder for me when people have treated me poorly because I'm a Muslim, or when I felt discriminated against because of my hijab. I remember the Musa al-Kazim, and he was in a prison but still had akhlaq, and I'm free, so I should have the same akhlaq. And inshallah, I'd love to do his ziyarah. As for the concept of intercession, at first I thought it was a little unusual. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, but what made it make sense was I realized people basically do this with each other all the time. So as a convert, people will ask me all the time to make dua for them. They'll say, oh, you're so great and you're so close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please make dua for me because He will answer you. And so it's basically the same thing. They are far closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than I could ever imagine. So I'm just asking them to make a dua for me. So my first Ramadan was very uplifting. It's a really great experience to just kind of know what it is your body is capable of. Alhamdulillah, I met another sister there who was also Mormon, and in the middle of Ramadan, she also became a Muslim. That's really, I guess that's it. My first Ramadan didn't really stick out. What else can I say? To be honest, I actually spent my first Ramadan most of the time alone. And that was a difficulty for me because I was by myself in California. When I would go to the mosques, I was by myself, and I knew everyone else was celebrating around me, but I was never invited for iftar. And this is something that is typical for converts. We are very lonely a lot of the time, but Ramadan, it's really hard. So one recommendation I would give to Muslims who have been raised in Islam and have Muslim families too, please invite converts for iftar. So the story of Kerbala for me is the story of just truth against justice for all of mankind. I mean, it wasn't just Muslims with the Imam Hussein alayhi salam, there were Christians with them. And so for me, what I found most inspiring in that story was the idea that as a Muslim, I should fight for humanity and I should stand for humanity. And this meant a lot to me because my stepfather was a refugee and he had come from a very ugly civil war in Central America. And so human rights and standing for justice were always things I cared about a great deal. And it's the reason I chose to go into international studies as my major. And so to see the idea of standing for mankind as such a focal point within Islam, whereas in this Wahhabi Salafi tradition, it's just completely missing. That's what resonated with me, and that's the big lesson that I take from it. So I do think Muslims do need to be more active talking about Islam, and the school of Ahl al-Bayt in particular really needs to take the lead. Unfortunately, most Muslims who are converting to Islam are converting into Sunni Islam kind of by default, because the dominance of information available in America is from Sunni Islam. The dominant groups out there doing dawah are all Sunnis. But the school of Ahl al-Bayt has a very unique position to reach Western people, because we have that sense of akhlaq that unfortunately is just hidden in this Wahhabi Salafi ideology. And we have the story of Hussein. For Americans in particular, to hear the story of a man standing for truth and justice and human rights, that is at the heart and soul of every single American. And if you look in our history, the characters that we respect the most are George Washington and Martin Luther King, people who stood for justice against a very strong force against it. And so if more Americans heard the story of Imam and Hussein, the entire view of the religion of Islam is going to change. So for people out there who are interested in learning more about Islam, I would recommend being very open to some very different ideologies. At first things are going to seem very strange and unusual, but try to look at the deeper meanings of things. So for example, hijab, on the outside, a lot of Western people are going to jump to the conclusion that it's oppressive. But if you look in that philosophy and that ideology of things underlying it, you're going to see it's the exact opposite. So be open-minded and don't be afraid to look beyond the cover of things. So for all the Muslims out there who have converts in their community, my message to you is to please try to make a convert feel included in the community. Make sure we know what's going on so we can be at the masjid and be with others. Invite us for iftar in Ramadan and to other events in your family and in your home. We became Muslimin to be Muslimin. We don't want to just be the convert. We want to be another Muslim like anyone else. And so, inshallah, if we're included more, we'll feel that way. And you'll see more of us in the masjids more often.